Hello everyone and welcome. The last fortnight has really turned our lives upside down, hasn't it? When life was just carrying on as normal, war was declared, not by a great superpower or a fanatical terrorist group, but by an enemy so small we can't even see its ever-growing army, so powerful that none of our weapons are effective, so dangerous that we're having to hide in our homes in the hope it doesn't find us. For those of us who've come to know God in some way, to love Him, trust Him, this is a bit of a puzzle. Why doesn't He intervene? Why does He allow the most vulnerable to suffer the most? Why are we all suffering from lack of social contact, fear for the future, confusion about what to do, and maybe disgruntled children who can't understand why they can't go for sleepovers or play football with their mates? Does believing in God give us the resilience to cope with this, to press forward with confidence? Psalm 88 was written by someone called Heman, who was going through something similar. We don't know the details. He or someone else with the same name is mentioned only a few times in the Bible and just in passing. The poem that he wrote is one long moan. One of the moaniest and most depressing parts of the Bible. Yet somehow that great poet and lyricist, King David, or maybe somebody else, made sure that it was included in the anthology that we now call the Book of Psalms. Somehow God prompted the preparation of the book and made sure that 3,000 years later, this poem, Psalm 88, is there to be read by anyone who cares to. There's no praise of God in this psalm. There's little in the way of trust in Him and hope for the future. But there's something here for us to learn from. I didn't choose today to talk about this psalm at all. It was chosen for me months ago, when the word corona only meant a circle of light around the sun. I didn't even devise the title, Free to be Real. But that's the message I'm wanting to convey today, that we are free to be real with God. Indeed, that's one of the things that God wants from us. Our writer's name, as I said, is Heman. And it's here at the beginning of the psalm in the heading there. That name probably means faithful, trusting, believing. But in some ways he doesn't appear to have lived up to his name. Instead, if we look at the psalm, we see that he is overwhelmed by the troubles he finds himself in. I'm overwhelmed by troubles, he says. You, that's God, you have overwhelmed me with all your waves. He feels there's little point in living. My life draws near to death. I'm set apart with the dead. And he feels depressed. You have put me in the lowest pit, in the darkest depths. I'm in despair. Like many in depression, he cannot even remember the good experiences of his life. From my youth I have suffered and been close to death. He feels trapped. I am confined and cannot escape. He feels totally friendless. You have taken from me my closest friends and made me repulsive to them. You have taken from me friend and neighbour. And then the very last line of this poem, this psalm, darkness is my closest friend. He feels exhausted. I'm like one without strength. His get up and go has got up and gone. He feels that God must be angry with him and have turned against him. Your wrath, he says, lies heavily on me. Your wrath has swept over me. Why, Lord, do you reject me? I could go on, but you get the picture. Through this psalm and the fact that it's in the Bible, God gives us permission to be real with him. That incredible right to complain to our Creator, our King, about what's happened to us on his watch. The right to bawl our eyes out because he's been so unfair. So if you are struggling with life, whether it be because of coronavirus, whether it be something else, whether it be a whole host of things one on top of the other, just like Heman, I would urge you to pour your heart out to God. Be real with him. You have that freedom to be real with him. Tell him how you feel. Well, if you're totally fine and can't really see what I'm labouring on about, please just remember this for a time when you're not totally fine. Yet in all this darkness, in all this moaning, there are points of light. For all that's going on, Heman is talking to God. He is praying. He says, day and night I cry out to you. I call out to you, Lord, every day. I cry to you for help, Lord. He also recognizes that God is the one who can help him in his dire situation. Towards the beginning of the psalm, he says, Lord, you are the God who saves me. And Heman has not changed his name, his identity. There are some really depressing names in the Bible. Lo Ruhamah, not loved. Ichabod, there's no glory. He could have taken a name like that. A friend of mine changed his name. With time and in popular culture, his name had changed to mean something rather rude. Something that didn't describe who he was at all. So he chose the name of one of the apostles instead. Heman may not have felt faithful, trusting, believing, but that is what, deep down and in the eyes of God, he still was, and he aspired to. He was Heman, trusting, believing. So, if you are going through a tough time, talk to God. Pray to him. Be real as you do so. Remind yourself that he can bring you through. He can rescue you, save you. And don't forget your identity. If you have put trust in him, you are a believer. That's the word the New Testament often uses for people who follow Jesus. You are God's child, precious and loved.